Hello, I'm Jim Boak. I'm with the Salford Group. I'm sales support for North America. I take care of the tillage and seeding products and the I-Series products and help the territory managers and the regional managers support with information to the dealers and to our customers. What we're looking at here is one of our air seeding systems, air planting systems. It's the 522 series, and they come in two models in this series, a 30-foot and a 40-foot model. They'll come in one or two tanks so that we could put on two different products at the same time. And we also have carrying capacity for liquid. We could put a liquid tank up front, and the size of that tank would vary from 300 to 500 gallons depending on how much equipment we have on the front for tillage or for inter-row planting. So this particular unit is set up with coulters and a banding kit on it. And that banding kit can be used to put down fertilizer or seed. So we can actually put seed down and narrow up the row spacing. We could twin line, for instance, 7.5 and 15, so we could have rows at 3 3/4 inches. This unit here used primarily for, in this scenario or situation, for cover crops and cereal grain crops and soybeans, and we'll be banding the fertilizer and 15-inch spacing in between the seed rows. So we're moving around to the side of the machine here. We're looking at the toolbars from the end view, and you'll notice that there's a set of toolbars. They're actually 11 inches apart, so we stagger the spacing for residue clearance. Those toolbars right now are we're using the Coiltech coulters, the Coiltech 2 inch and 5/8 coils, but the row units also can mount on the front bars. So we could have row units front and back, or we could have row units on the front and the Coiltechs on the back. So they're fully interchangeable. On the 522 model, we control these two toolbars independently. So the 525s, they would go up and down together, but the 522, they're controlled independently, and that allows the producer to do a lot of creative things with tools and operating depths on the machine. And so now we'll take a look at how we control operating depth on the row unit itself. So we'll zoom in a little closer and take a close look at the Coiltech coulters with the banding system. And as I said before, this is capable of putting down seed and fertilizer. When we use the banding system, we'll use a 13 flute 1.25 inch width blade, and that cuts a nice trench. It's about 1.25 inches wide, and it stays open for about 13 inches. If you take a picture looking straight down, that trench will be open for 12 to 13 inches, so it's very easy to hit that hole with seed and fertilizer. The banding attachment simply fastens onto the shank and comes back, and we just put basically a metal seed tube on there to protect it against flying debris and stones, and hold it rigid, and then feed it with either 1 inch or 1.25 inch plastic lines. Moving back to the row units themselves, these are a planter style row unit with the depth gauge wheel at the back, and we have no tools adjustment down pressure system from 100 to 500 pounds. Simply by moving this bar to the front at one, we achieve 100 pounds of pressure. Moving it to the back, up to 500 pounds of down pressure. The linkages are all protected by bushings, so there's no maintenance required on these units. Go back to the depth gauge setting, or the depth setting here. We have 1/4 inch depth adjustments to give you very fine control, especially for small cover crop seeds and the smaller oil seeds. There is one lubrication point on the back end here. It's a grease fitting that lubricates the pivot, and the idea for the pivot is to keep the press wheel straight directly over top of the seed trench as we're turning around obstacles and around fence lines. So these double disc row units on this parallel frame, twin bar frame, allows us to do a lot of different things with row spacings, and there's row spacing configurations from 7.5 inches 7.5 inches, 10 inches, 12 inches are the standards, and 15 as well. So a producer can choose the spacings according to the crop production, or crop cycle, and rotation that he's planting in. The most common is 7.5 inch spacing, and it depends largely on whether this is being used for cereals and cover crops or soybeans and cover crops. We'll take a close-in look at the double disc opener. As you can see, they're a very narrow trenched, narrow angle double disc opener, and we're using a poly material as a blowout limiter, and that prevents the soil from blowing out and opening up the seed trench during rotation in moist soils. So it keeps that trench nicely formed and prevents soil from this row blowing out and flowing over onto the next row, a fault that they would call stepping if you didn't have those on, and it creates different seeding depths if you don't have a device similar to that. This little device here is a seed firmer. It makes sure that the seed is locked firmly into the bottom of the trench, and it always pulls a little bit of soil over the seed, so that in a case where you had a really wet condition, there would always be some soil over top of the seed. And then of course it's followed up by the press closing wheel, which is also the depth gauge wheel. Like row crop planters, we're able to monitor every row on these systems. So each row actually has its own population and blockage warning sensor. It's more common to monitor only the primary system, since the likelihood of these plugging is very low, but some producers have a preference for monitoring each row, and we're able to do that. It gives you some insurance up in the cab that every row is planting. But in some systems, these are quite reliable. There's probably less chance of plugging here than there is with a box drill, and we have quite a few systems out that we don't even bother putting the blockage warning systems in. It is an insurance policy, and it gives the operator some comfort from the cab that he knows that every row is getting seed and or fertilizer. So moving to the back of the 522, we got a rear view. We can see that the operator platform is good and strong and wide if you have to get up and open the tanks and look inside, or for going up for filling. It's a good, safe, sturdy platform. You'll notice that the transport width is quite narrow on these units, with the row units sticking just outside of the rear wheels, so it's transporting at about 14 feet wide. We're looking at also the blower system, the air pressurized system. It's a REM fan, 17 inch, and it's able to deliver high volumes of seed and fertilizer out to the 40, 50, 60 foot widths that we need for some of these units. The metering systems can either be ground driven for simplicity or hydraulically driven for variable rate applications. So you can stick your mapping card into the monitor, and you can vary the rate or adjust the rate on the go. The meter itself is made out of food grade stainless, and the meter roller inside the meter housing is plastic, so both materials very resistant to corrosion. The tanks themselves are also plastic, so there's any of the materials, any of the components that are in contact with fertilizer or seed treatments are either stainless steel or plastic, and it's a food grade stainless, so it's very resistant to corrosion. Okay, so we've pulled the inspection cover off. You're able to pull that inspection cover without losing any seed or fertilizer. So it allows you with a full load to look in and see if your meters are starting to build up with, on a moist day you might possibly get some buildup on the meter, even though they're plastic. So you want to be able to look in once in a while and check to see what's going on there. So if you look at this meter, it's a peg roller meter. They're extremely accurate. If we're looking for 2.7 pounds of canola, for instance, we're able to deliver that. If we're looking for 34,000 corn plants or 160,000 bean plants, we're able to calibrate this meter to that point of accuracy. So the front part of this panel is a slanted panel. If you pull it off, that's where you dump all of your seed. And the lower panel, which looks almost like this, is where you do your calibration, where you drop your seed or fertilizer down for calibration. So that's a quick overview of the model, Salford Model 522 seeding units. There's a number of different, and I said seeding units, but they're actually designed for seed and fertilizer as well. There's a number of different configurations. We have these in 3-point hitch models. We have them in 525 toolbar models, up to 70 feet wide and capable of either towing or hauling up to 925 bushel of seed. So there's everything from, the small 3-point hitch style units. They're 140 bushel carts with a 3-point hitch on the back. You'd have your blower up front in that case. For a smaller producer, clear on up to the guy that's farming 10 and 12,000 acres of land. So as a company, we probably offer the largest range of air cart and application tools in the industry.